Welcome to Rooted and Ready from Annie's Project, where we share real conversations about risk, resilience, and the decisions shaping life in agriculture. I'm your host, Carisha Devlin, farmer and training and curriculum officer with Annie's Project. Today I'm joined by Andrea Parent-Tibbetts, owner of Clover Brooke Farm in Hyde Park, New York, a solar-powered fiber farm raising alpacas, llamas, sheep, goats, and more, while welcome thousands of visitors each year to learn about agriculture and fiber arts. Andrea has built a farm that blends livestock, education, agritourism, and community leadership. And today we're talking about what she's learned along the way and why giving back to others in agriculture is such an important part of her work. Andrea, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thrilled to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. So, Andrea, let's start off by learning a little bit about Clover Brooke Farm. How did your family go from owning a few goats to building this diversified farm that you run today?
Yes, that was truly a journey. So we started raising goats back in 2008 and specifically bought a couple dairy goats for our daughter who was very interested in livestock, but I have to be honest, I think it was mostly me, and really and really wanted the to enjoy the journey as a family in terms of what farming meant.
Mhm.
I come from a very traditional household. I grew up in Maine. And we did not have farm. Well, we did not grow up on a farm, and there was very few farms around us. But I always thought it was very interesting. And so we kind of took the journey in 2008. Started with a few dairy goats, and realized, especially in our area, we're here in Dutchess County, New York, which is about an hour and a half north of New York City. Still, I mean, it is kind of. We call it a bedroom community for the city, but there's still quite a few farms. And so it was kind of a learning process along the way. We were fortunate to have a lot of friends in 4-H who got us started and helped us going forward because, as you know, having a farm is never easy. And so they kind of brought us along the way and said, okay, here's step one, goats. Good fencing. Step
Mhm.
two, you're going to want to get some livestock guardian animals. And step three, what it means in terms of proper nutrition and things like that. So along the way, as you've heard, we acquired some llamas, acquired some alpacas. That was mostly because we started off with the guarding part of it, and then we started
Okay.
into rescuing a few. And that was really kind of a true curiosity to myself, and recognizing that they can also be used for fiber. So it was a big step from what we were before. I was a school administrator for 30 years. My
Oh,
husband's
wow.
a local professor, and in 2016 is when I retired. I do air quotes. We all know that means retired into farming. And then realized, this would be a really fun business, fiber farming, when we purchased our farm in 2016, which allowed us to grow. So since then, at that point from 2008, which we had a little mini homestead, I think it was 7 acres at the time, and another uh, part of town, and then moved up in 2016, purchasing a farm, 45 acres, and now we have over 100 animals that are specifically used for fiber, collecting about 350 pounds of fiber a year. Um, we can get into all kinds of things we do with them, which I know we will, but we'll stop at that just to let you know that that is the focus of our farm is fiber
Mhm.
farming. However, we do, just like any other farm, have to diversify to be able to cover our costs, and that's the agritourism side.
Well, thank you for giving us a summary, a background of how you got started. That was very interesting. I'm taking a little side path to thank you for being a school administrator. I have the opportunity to serve on my local school board, and it's really given me even a greater appreciation for our administrators and teachers because you all deal with a lot. So, thank you for your service there.
Oh, you're
So,
very welcome.
we'll circle back back to the farm. And you told us about how you're focusing on fiber animals like the alpacas, llamas, sheep, and goats. And not many people may be really familiar with them. So can you kind of dive back and tell us a little bit about what makes that type of farming operation unique and what drew you to the fiber production?
Sure. So first of all, llamas and alpacas seem to still be unique, even though there are over hundreds of thousands throughout North America. They actually
Mhm.
came here at the beginning of the 1900s. And in some states, they're still classified as exotics, but they
Okay.
are a main source, one of an important and increasing source of fiber. We all know sheep has been number one for
Mm-hmm.
wool. And there's a lot of benefits to llama alpaca fiber, which we won't get into here. But the whole point of fiber farming, which was very unique to our county, because our county here is mainly kind of classical farming, your dairy, your meat,
Mm-hmm.
and veg farming. And so, the fiber farming, yes, there's a few, there's a handful of sheep farms, but just sheep.
Mm-hmm.
So, the whole thinking of fiber farming, not just for the fiber, but farming itself connects agriculture, science, and creativity. And, just for the animals itself, understanding the genetics, nutrition, and taking some product from them and creating something really unique and beautiful. We are truly a small scale farm in the grand scheme of things, even though maybe 350 pounds of fiber sounds like a lot, but a true commercial farm is hundreds of thousands of
Mm-hmm.
fiber. But having that small scale style allows us to connect to the community, allows us to create a very much a learning environment. And then we have visitors that come here both to visit the animals, and also we have visitors that participate in our classes. Again, small, our classes, I try to keep them no larger than 16 people, 15 to 16. Um, and then they can see the full circle of the creative process from the animal that's being raised in the pasture to we do sharing demonstrations, we do fiber demos, do hand processing so they can see how it works. And then we'll also take that product and then we'll teach them how to make things from it. It could be your standard learning how to spin, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things you can do with fiber from needle felting, wet felting, and so on. And so people really appreciate understanding the process at hand. Some people are terming that slow fashion, because you're learning kind of all the steps involved, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes you really, I think, treasure that product you've made more than if you were to go to a local store and just buy
Oh,
something off the rack.
yes,
So there's
absolutely.
there's a lot of benefits to that.
Mhm. In preparation for our interview, I had gone to your website and was looking through it and was really fascinated about all the experiences that you do offer, the classes and so forth. Why was it important to you to build a farm that invites people in, to invite the public in to learn?
Well, coming from my years of school administration, um, community is what really brings people together.
Hmm.
And the other aspect of education and learning is what we call experiential learning, hands-on. We all know that we benefit from, in person, generally visual. A lot of us have sensory, connections to things. And that
Hmm.
fiber, and I have to say, I think that's how I ended up doing fiber because I'm a very much sensory oriented person.
Hmm.
I go to the county fair and I feel like I have to touch every sheep and things like that. But aside from that, agriculture itself, especially in our area, is disappearing, unfortunately.
Hmm.
Farms are being bought up by commercial developments, and whether they're setting them up for additional stores and or housing units, because as I said, we are a bedroom community for New York City. I really felt that setting up our farm and making it an agricultural venture was really important for people who have become disassociated with, and we'll specifically say for fiber. We know
Hmm.
that's already happened with a lot of farms here on the East Coast, and we do what little we can with that and talking about, that. But the fiber part, I wanted people to come here to connect with the land, to connect with the animals is a really
Hmm.
important part. Um, and when they do, they start getting really interested about the whole process. I think we have about 5,000 people that come through a year for the agritourism side, and most of the experiences are hands-on with the animals, such as llama alpaca hikes, goat walks, donkey
Hmm.
walks, and that is purposely set so people can connect with the animal. And also because about, I'd say 90% or maybe even higher of our visitors are from New York City. They're looking for a therapeutic outlet. They're looking
Hmm.
for a chance to slow down. And between coming up to the country, walking with an animal, it's generally a very quiet walk. It's a mile long. Um, the difference of noises from street noise,
Hmm.
horns and traffic to birds chirping. Sometimes our neighboring farm, there's horses, you'll hear horse neighboring neighing. That really goes a long way to people's own, I think, mental health. And,
Oh.
with that, they then connect. It invites, they feel comfortable, they feel included, they feel as though they've connected with something. And then often they want to find a product in the farm store that has connected to that animal. So hypothetically, it could be a skein of yarn.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're a knitter, maybe they're a crocheter, and so they'll buy the skein of yarn. Maybe they're not, they'll buy for someone else. Maybe they'll buy something that's been made from that animal. And so that connection, starting grassroots, brings them all the way through. And once I buy that product, take it home, they have this feeling that they really enjoyed their time. It was really kind of a lot of people say a bucket list item, but
Mm-hmm.
it really is an experience they want to come back and experience. And so whether they've experienced it, kind of organically walking with the animal, they want to come back and experience it through hands-on learning. And that's where it then goes into the fiber arts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's something maybe even at the core of all of us that when it comes to nature and animals, there's something restorative about that. I think that, and I can definitely see if you're living in a city environment and just how peaceful and relaxing and just maybe even centering that is to have that opportunity to have somewhere to go to connect with nature, to connect with those animals. And I will tell you again, as I was looking through your website, I was thinking, and I live on a farm, but I was thinking, oh, I wish I lived closer to New York. I would like to visit Andrea's farm. That sounds like fun, going on a
Thank
hike
you.
with a llama or alpaca. I know my kids would have fun with that too. So you brought up the importance of hands-on learning, and I completely agree with everything you said about that. I'm one of those that I really need to have hands-on opportunities. I need to make those connections in my mind. And a lot of people do learn from that, and they would rather learn from experience than formal training where you're sitting in a classroom and having somebody to lecture to you. So, what were some of the most important learning experience that helped you to grow as a farmer?
Oh, there's so many. Um, I will tell you, having started a new career from, as I mentioned, school
Hmm.
administration, we dabbled a little bit in homesteading and then went full force into farming. Um, I think humility is the number one growth. You know what? We've heard this cliche, we learn from our mistakes, but nothing is more centering than when have your business, your animals, you are very concerned about their welfare and you
Hmm.
want to make sure you do everything right. And so, I will say one of the, in my career prior as a school administration, there was support, but not quite the same that I see in the farming community. The farming community support is genuine. They want to see each other one succeed,
Hmm.
and be successful. And that's the one thing I really value about farmers. I mean, I always call them the smartest people in the world because, as you have to know a little bit of everything, and
Yes.
that's something that I've learned along the way. But at the same time, is don't be afraid to reach out and ask. And that is one of the most benefits because yes, we can all go onto the web and we can all spend hours searching on stuff and try to figure it out. But sometimes the fastest way and also the best connection with other farmers is saying, hey, how did you handle this? Or
Hmm.
had you run into this? How did you, manage this? So, having that connection, we could call it a network. Um, is really supportive for farming in itself. And, I try, we we do meet once a month. We bring a couple, well, more than a couple. It's grown now. It's a fiber community,
Okay.
and it was meant to be people who are fiber artists, but now it's been broadened out to people who are farmers. And I
Hmm.
say, come over. We pick generally the third Saturday, the afternoon of, and we just sit around the table. Some of us are working on projects. Some of us are teaching one another. Some of us are talking about what's going on our farm. And I
Hmm.
think that value is really important to whether it's mental health as one of the words that's really popular,
Hmm.
restorative. That's really important because there's times where, we've been working on something, and I'll bring it back to potentially an animal. You think you're doing everything right for their health, and all of a sudden something happens. And that is the nature of, of 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 I should say, not the health, but how, in terms of handling animals.
Mm-hmm.
And and sometimes saying, oh yeah, talking to another person, I experienced this. This is how I handled it. This is what I did. But when it all comes down to the end of the day, you have to feel that you tried your hardest.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you hit some roadblocks, and maybe there was a little humility along the way, but that is just the nature of it. And what better to be in a forgiving environment of people that say, you know what, sometimes you hit a wall, and sometimes it's hard. There's ways around it. You can do it.
Mm-hmm.
So those are really beneficial to farming in itself.
I love that. And I think that's such important advice to, first of all, not be afraid to ask, to reach out to others, to be vulnerable and saying, I don't know. And I think for some people that can be hard sometimes.
Mm,
But just surrounding yourself with a network of people that, are in similar positions or can support you and help you as you're making those decisions and moving forward. So building a farm or even running a farm, it's going to come with challenges. Can you share a moment when there was something that didn't go as planned and what that taught you?
okay, I'll pick one of many. That is the nature of farming. I have to
Right.
tell you. And when we started in 2016, I said to my husband, okay, we're going to have multiple plans because that's the way farming is. We're going to start with plan A. If that didn't work, we'll go to plan B. We'll go to plan
Mm-hmm.
C. And there's nothing wrong with that because the
No.
most important part is to think through as much as you can at that
Mm-hmm.
time. But sometimes the things that you can't think through involved animals in the sense
Yes.
that I've got one really interesting aspect is when we bought our farm in 2016, we decided to breed some llamas because we were in it for the long haul, meaning
Mm-hmm.
that one of the things about llamas is, of course, they're beautiful animals. They produce fiber, they can use as livestock guardians, but they live on an average for 20 years. So I always tell people it's a long commitment,
Mm-hmm.
unless you're looking to breed and sell, which we weren't. We were really looking to breed and use them on the farm and also for our kids to grow up with.
Mm-hmm.
So we started off with our very first llama, bought it from a breeder in New York, and a very well-known breeder. And she told when we bought them, the llama was pregnant, and she said you can expect them to breed at this time. Da da da. Anyways, we were watching as we all do. What do they say? Don't watch a pot boil. We
Yeah.
were watching her every hour when we thought we knew she was going to deliver. But one of the surprises that she did on us is she delivered 3.5 weeks early, which
Oh.
is pretty rare. First of all, llamas and alpacas system are very delicate
Mm-hmm.
anyways. They're a lot very different from goats who, when goats are born or any other kind of more traditional livestock, they almost come out standing up,
Right.
and they're ready to go. Llamas and alpacas, not quite the same. We learned the way.
Oh.
So long
Okay.
story short, this little cria is what a baby llama is called, was born from the calculation of dates 3 weeks early. He couldn't stand, he couldn't
Mm-hmm.
nurse. Some of the signs of a preemie, such as like other animals, their hoofs aren't
Mm-hmm.
developed, their ears aren't developed, or not
Oh.
standing up.
Yeah.
Anyways, so of course it's one of those things that, very first llama born on the farm, and I'm like, why does it have to be the first one? Why couldn't I have at least had experience with one? Reached out to local llama breeders, said, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. Of course, it was great because we could FaceTime, I could show them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were extremely helpful. And so they said, okay, this is what you need to do. It was a little scary for me because what I needed to do is I needed to start tube feeding this llama.
Mm.
I had never tube feed before.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, having them on speakerphone and FaceTime, they said, assuring me you can do it, you can do it, this is
Yeah.
what you need to do. And so once you've done it a couple times, you kind of know the signs to look for in terms of the tube going into the stomach and not the
Mm-hmm.
lungs, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really wanted to be a role model to also show the kids never give up. Never give up. Keep trying. If you know what you need to do, then do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't feel defeated. Don't feel though you can't. Do everything you can to at least feel you're making this, in the best instance. And so we tube fed this baby llama for basically 2 days, every 2 hours. I
Yeah.
basically
It's like a
slept in the
newborn
car.
again.
It actually was more than newborn. I would joke around. I took better care of this baby llama than sometimes I think my own children. But the reality is um, I had the same encouragement, don't give up, keep trying, keep
Mm-hmm.
trying. After about 2 days, he finally got his energy up. He was able to stand. Mom was amazing. And it took off from there. And it was such a success story because, ironically, here we are, 7 years later. He's the biggest llama on our farm. He is a bit of a brat because I think we kind of coddled him a little bit, but that's all right.
Yeah.
But he is a snuggle bug. I mean, you can walk up to him, you can hug him, you can snuggle him. But the point is, I wanted to show my kids and myself that it may not be traditional farming, but we can do it, and
Mm-hmm.
for the benefit of this animal, to make sure that we give them everything we can. And so after that, we did have a vet come in and just make sure that everything was normal because it started off abnormal. And, as I said, 7 years later now, we've got this. His name is Sydney,
Sydney.
and he's probably close to about 500 pounds as he's
Oh,
a big
wow.
boy. But yeah, so he's our success story. But most importantly, um, to show my kids never give up. Keep trying,
Right.
keep trying. That's a really
Yeah.
important aspect that I think sometimes in other professions they don't see. But in farming,
Mm-hmm.
I know that's a constant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I completely agree. I think I think there's a lot of benefits to being able to have the opportunity to grow up on a farm, but just some of the things like you shared, the challenges, how you address them, how you overcome them, because it's always going to be something, whether
Hmm.
it's weather related or, with animals, it could be injuries, disease, instance like early birth, like you shared. But I think it just shows them um, that you can be resilient and overcome adversity, and then with also a great work ethic. So all of those things.
Thank
Oh,
you.
let's let's switch gears a little bit. Uh, you've been a farmer. We've talked about you being an educator, both in your previous career and you're still an educator now. Inviting people to your farm, giving them classes, experiences. You're a mentor to other farmers. You're a community leader. What does being a woman in agriculture mean to you today?
Mm. A lot, a lot. In our area, there are quite a few legacy farms managed by
Hmm.
men.
Okay,
Not to say that that's the reason I'm a woman farmer, but the point is, um, it's a career that should be for anyone who chooses it. It
absolutely.
shouldn't be for something that was handed down to you. It shouldn't be because it's a leftover job. It should be something that you choose, you feel comfortable, you can grow with. My previous, as a school administrator, actually, my background was finance and business. And so I dealt with a lot of tough people, and it helped me develop a skill set that I tell people that if I hadn't been doing what I did before, I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now,
Hmm.
meaning farming was completely new to me. Wasn't it, a lot of people say, wasn't I worried? I wasn't worried because it's the same ethics of working hard, um, learning, applying,
Hmm.
and not letting people say you can't do it. That is a strong aspect for me. I can do it. You can do it. We can all do it. Can build a network. We can support one another, and that's what it
Hmm.
comes down to. Um, and that was something that still is in the back of my mind and still pushes me forward. Um, you know, and with that in mind, I tell other women who come in is you need to add a little extra grit to yourself at times because, there are times that you may be considered not know. I mean, I will back into this living in a very traditional county with traditional farming, being one of the few women that brought in llamas. And of course, I was dubbed the llama lady
Mm.
instead of Andrea Parent-Tibbetts, but that's all right. They would say to me, honey, I don't know what you're going to do with those animals. And I'd
Oh.
say, don't worry, you'll see. You'll see.
Hmm.
I have a lot of thoughts, and there were a few people, non or traditional farms that said, you go get it, you can do it.
Yeah.
And that kind of encourages me more. But what encourages me is the people who say you can. I'm like, oh,
Mm.
don't say that.
Yeah. I'll show you.
um, Show you. And I had the skill set for it because they did not know what my background was. They
Hmm.
didn't know I came from, traditional finance and business background, which sometimes I think they play hard there. And
Hmm.
I said, just give me a little bit of time to catch up. learn and get, my feet kind of dirty, and then I'll figure it out. And I wanted to be a model for other women to say, I think that is a very important skill set, and I will help you along the way, and or
Mm-hmm.
I will be a resource along the way because we all need those every once in a while. And granted, I had a couple in the back there that I could call. I could say, "What do you think?" I actually had this one older gentleman who was a farmer not far from here, and he was really he was progressive in his own way. Even though he's in his late 80s, and he was kind of my cheerleader along the way, and he's well regarded in the county. And I would use him as kind of my, well, so and so said, or
Mm-hmm.
I'd call him, say, what do you think? And he was always very practical, very clear in terms of his thoughts, and I appreciated that. But sometimes you have to find your cheerleaders, pick them wisely, and support them, and recognize that you can do it and you can push forward. And whether it's in agriculture or other types of areas, just keep that determination going because you have every ability of completing it just like anyone else.
That's great advice. So you mentioned that you want to be a model for other women. And if there are some young women or any woman that's listening who is thinking about entering agriculture, whether it's as, their first career, maybe they're on their second act and they have a dream and they're wanting to start a business to get into agriculture in retirement, what advice would you give them?
Uh, Stay curious, ask questions.
Hmm.
I consider myself a lifelong learner. I know that's a bit of a cliche statement. I'm always, every winter, actually, I say to myself, I'm going to learn something new. But I think for people that are starting, stay curious, ask questions, find mentors.
Hmm.
I think that's really important. I think people are afraid to ask others about other people helping them or being their mentor. I will tell you, when people ask me to be the mentor, I feel it's an honor. I
Hmm.
say, of course, and whether it's a lot of time or not, whatever I can do to help you and or be a sounding board, do it. Because
Hmm.
at the same time, it may be back and forth. We bring a lot of college students through here, whether they're looking to be pre-vet
Hmm.
or they're looking for fiber art specifically. And I also say is open up your farm to youth. I think that is sometimes the most genuine and also makes you kind of rethink. Well, I don't want to say rethink, but it makes you understand what you're doing this for. To be honest, even though I am doing this for our family, for myself, I'm really doing this for the future in agriculture.
Hmm.
I think that is the number one. I mean, I find what I'm doing to be very important, specifically fiber farming. And the only way we're going to be able to keep this going is if we bring in youth and we teach others. And
Hmm.
so I think that's a number one, um, is to bring the youth along. And, it's help them create passion, help them find their niche, help them find what they really enjoy. It doesn't have to be fiber farming. Maybe it's land stewardship. Maybe it's business model. Anyways, but the point is I think connect with the youth to bring them along. And one of the other things too, between college students, we also have a lot of 4-Hers that come through here,
Hmm.
and so that's another plus in many ways, and that helps with kind of developing the next generation whether they farm or not, they have the knowledge.
And just that exposure to agriculture.
Hmm.
And as you said earlier, we have so many people across our nation, across the world, are so far removed from agriculture now. So just allowing them the opportunity to learn about it is really important for all of us. So, Andrea, when you look at everything that's happened at Clover Brooke Farm, the animals, your education programs, your community connections, uh, and I know you've addressed this a little bit as we've chatted this morning, but what continues to motivate you to keep building this work?
Um, Great question. What motivates me is the impact with people,
Hmm.
the connection. Um, that's kind of what I want to be known for, going forward. Is one that maybe inspired others, maybe ones that helped others get to their next, whether it's career, goal,
Hmm.
project, whatever it is. Um, you know, I don't want to call myself this, but some people refer to as a life coach. I feel like, I've had enough experience working with people that I can help them mentally kind of uh, think through specific, maybe potentially hurdles.
Hmm.
But I think most importantly is, you know, whether it's education around animals, it's education around land stewardship, it's education around community dynamics in terms of farming. That's really what I want to be known for in a meaningful way, and helping people keeping uh, farming exciting. And there's so many, and this is one of the things we do in our summer camp also is I let the children, we talk about camps because this is kind of my whole generational, let's build, let's think.
Hmm.
I have them think about camps. And of course, they're very traditional in terms of, dairy, we'll say vegetable growing. But I get them to think creatively and get them to think about, farming doesn't have to be for a product if it doesn't, or it could be for your own enjoyment. It could be for your own therapy. Think of it that way. And once we get that going, the juices in these kids' brains, they start thinking about amazing things. I had one kid that developed a frog farm specifically because he wanted to go from pond to pond and spend time with the frogs. And
Oh.
it wasn't for purpose of food. It wasn't for purpose. It was for his own restorative type
Hmm.
therapy. Others thought about traditional farming. Others thought about blending different types of style of farms together. But the point is, this is what we need to get going. We need to start thinking creatively about farms. It's not specific. It's not structure. It's not in its own traditional sense. It can be many different ways.
Hmm.
One of the words I just learned recently is because of land is becoming difficult, at least on the East Coast and the West Coast, to farm on. A lot of people are developing something they call a farmette, which is a very small plot, and they're being very efficient in their farming and usually choosing specific one type of product.
Hmm.
And so, hey, if you're doing it as a side job, if you're doing it, for as your new career, great. But the point is, there's a lot of perspective possibilities for farming in many
Hmm.
different ways. And, thinking about it can be very fun. And there's a lot of creativity that goes into pulling together farms.
Yeah, I love that. And just the whole thinking outside of the box. And what you can create and still be connected to nature and to the ground, to animals. Well, I would definitely classify you as a life coach, Andrea. I know I'm feeling inspired just from our conversation today. And then I really, I see your arc as an educator, that it is continuing into now your role as a farmer, that you still have that passion for
Hmm.
not only learning but also educating and helping others.
Thank you.
Andrea's Andrea's story is a reminder that agriculture isn't just about production. It's also about connection, creativity, and community. From raising fiber animals to mentoring new farmers and welcome visitors to experience agriculture firsthand, Andrea Parent-Tibbetts is helping people better understand where agriculture fits in their lives. Andrea, thank you for joining me today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And thanks for listening to Rooted and Ready from Annie's Project, where we share real conversations about agriculture, risk, and the people shaping its future. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe and share it with someone in agriculture. Until next time, stay rooted and ready.